Marcus Aurelius's wealth psychology. Marcus Aurelius controlled wealth equivalent to $4.6 trillion, yet he slept on a simple bed, ate basic food, and wore plain clothes. This wasn't poverty. This was the most sophisticated wealth psychology ever developed. While modern billionaires struggle with money anxiety, lifestyle inflation, and the fear of losing it all, Marcus had cracked the code on true financial freedom. His approach was so counterintuitive that it seems insane. The more wealth you have, the simpler you should live. But modern neuroscience proves he was right. Studies show that people who practice voluntary discomfort like Marcus make 300% better financial decisions, experience less money stress, and build more sustainable wealth. Tim Cook practices this. Despite running the world's most valuable company, he lives in a modest home and drives a simple car. Warren Buffett lives by it. With over $100 billion, he still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,000. Naval Ravikant credits it for his peace of mind. After building multiple companies and achieving financial independence, he focuses on experiences and relationships rather than accumulating possessions. By the end of this masterclass, you'll understand why living below your means isn't about being cheap. It's about being psychologically invincible. It's about building a relationship with wealth that serves your deepest values rather than enslaving you to endless consumption. It's about achieving the kind of financial freedom that goes far beyond having money in the bank. The paradox of Marcus Aurelius runs deeper than most people realize. Here was a man who could afford anything in the known world, yet he chose to live with remarkable simplicity. He could have built palaces that would make Versailles look modest. He could have surrounded himself with every luxury the ancient world could provide. He could have indulged every desire and whim without consequence. Instead, he chose a different path. His personal quarters were spartanly furnished. His meals were simple and nutritious rather than elaborate and exotic. His clothing was functional rather than ostentatious. His entertainment was philosophical discussion and reading rather than lavish spectacles. His transportation was practical rather than ceremonial. This wasn't asceticism for its own sake. This wasn't religious self-denial or philosophical posturing. This was a carefully calculated approach to wealth that maximized his psychological freedom while minimizing the corrupting influence of luxury. Marcus understood something that modern psychology has now confirmed. The relationship between money and happiness is far more complex than most people realize. The philosophical foundation for Marcus's approach came from Stoic teachings about the nature of external goods. Stoics divided all things into three categories: things that are good, things that are bad, and things that are indifferent. Virtue was the only true good. Vice was the only true evil. Everything else, including wealth, was classified as indifferent. This doesn't mean wealth was worthless or that Marcus was indifferent to the empire's financial health. It means that wealth was a tool to be used wisely rather than a goal to be pursued for its own sake. Like a hammer or a sword, money was valuable for what it could accomplish, not for what it represented about status or identity. Marcus wrote extensively about this perspective in his personal journal, which we know as the Meditations. He reminded himself constantly that external possessions were temporary and ultimately meaningless compared to the development of character and the fulfillment of duty. He practiced mental exercises designed to maintain this perspective even while surrounded by unimaginable luxury. One of his most powerful practices was negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum. He would regularly imagine losing everything he possessed, his wealth, his power, his position, even his life. This wasn't pessimistic thinking. It was psychological preparation that allowed him to appreciate what he had while remaining unattached to it. The neuroscience behind Marcus's approach is fascinating. Modern brain imaging studies show that people who practice voluntary simplicity develop different neural patterns than those who pursue luxury consumption. Their brains show less activation in areas associated with craving and anxiety, and more activation in areas associated with contentment and decision-making clarity. Hedonic adaptation explains why Marcus's approach was so effective. This psychological phenomenon describes how people quickly return to a baseline level of happiness despite positive or negative life changes. When you acquire something you've wanted, the initial pleasure fades rapidly as your brain adjusts to the new normal. This creates a hedonic treadmill where you need increasingly expensive purchases to achieve the same level of satisfaction. Marcus avoided this trap by maintaining a simple baseline because his daily life remained relatively unchanged regardless of his wealth. He never developed the psychological dependence on luxury that traps so many wealthy people. He could enjoy fine things when appropriate without needing them for psychological well-being. The anxiety of abundance is another phenomenon that Marcus's approach addressed. Contrary to popular belief, having more money often creates more stress rather than less. Wealthy people worry about losing their wealth, making the right investment decisions, protecting their assets from taxes and inflation, and managing the complex responsibilities that come with significant resources. Marcus eliminated much of this anxiety by maintaining a simple lifestyle that required relatively little money to sustain. Even if he lost 90% of his wealth, his daily life would remain largely unchanged. This psychological security allowed him to make better financial decisions because he wasn't operating from a place of fear or desperation. Decision fatigue from too many choices is another problem that wealth can create. When you can afford anything, every purchase becomes a complex decision. Should you buy the expensive option or the moderate one? Should you upgrade your house, your car, your wardrobe? The constant stream of choices can be mentally exhausting and lead to poor decisions. Marcus simplified his life to minimize these decisions. By establishing clear principles about what he needed versus what he wanted, he could make most consumption choices automatically. This preserved his mental energy for the important decisions that actually mattered for the empire and his personal development. The paradox of choice in luxury consumption is particularly relevant for modern entrepreneurs. When you achieve financial success, you're suddenly faced with an overwhelming array of options for how to spend your money. Luxury cars, expensive watches, designer clothes, exotic vacations, premium everything. The sheer number of choices can become paralyzing. Marcus avoided this paralysis by focusing on function over form. He asked himself what he actually needed to accomplish his goals, then chose the simplest option that met those needs. This approach eliminated the stress of constantly evaluating luxury options, while ensuring he had everything necessary for effectiveness. Brain imaging studies on voluntary discomfort show remarkable results. People who regularly practice voluntary simplicity, like eating simple foods or sleeping on hard surfaces, develop greater resilience to stress and better emotional regulation. Their brains become more efficient at distinguishing between wants and needs, leading to better decision-making in all areas of life. Marcus's wealth management philosophy was built on several key principles that modern psychology has validated. External things are not the problem. It's your judgment about them that creates suffering. This insight from his meditations reflects a deep understanding of how our thoughts about possessions affect our well-being more than the possessions themselves. The discipline of desire was central to his approach. Instead of wanting what you don't have, learn to want what you already have. This mental shift eliminates the constant craving that drives compulsive consumption while increasing appreciation for your current circumstances. Premeditatio malorum, or negative visualization, helped Marcus maintain perspective on his wealth. By regularly imagining loss, he could appreciate abundance without becoming attached to it. This practice also prepared him psychologically for the inevitable changes that affect all external circumstances. The view from above was another powerful technique. Marcus would imagine viewing his life from the perspective of eternity, seeing how temporary and insignificant material possessions really are. This cosmic perspective helped him maintain focus on what truly mattered while avoiding the petty concerns that consume most people's attention. Memento mori, remembering death, affected every aspect of Marcus's relationship with wealth. Knowing that he would eventually lose everything anyway, he could hold possessions lightly while using them effectively. This awareness of mortality created urgency around meaningful goals while reducing attachment to material accumulation. The voluntary discomfort protocol that Marcus followed had several components. Physical practices included eating simple food, wearing basic clothing, and maintaining minimal possessions. These weren't extreme deprivations, but deliberate choices to avoid luxury dependence. Mental exercises focused on gratitude for basics and appreciation of simplicity. Marcus would regularly remind himself how fortunate he was to have clean water, adequate food, and safe shelter. This practice prevented him from taking basic necessities for granted while reducing the psychological need for luxury. Financial habits included living below his means and practicing delayed gratification. Even with unlimited resources, Marcus maintained spending discipline and avoided impulse purchases. This created a psychological buffer that enhanced his sense of security and control. Social practices involved avoiding status competition and lifestyle inflation. Marcus didn't try to impress others with his possessions or compete in displays of wealth. This eliminated a major source of financial pressure while allowing him to focus on more meaningful forms of achievement. Spiritual disciplines helped him find meaning beyond material accumulation. Marcus invested heavily in philosophical study, personal development, and service to others. These pursuits provided lasting satisfaction that material possessions could never match. Modern billionaires who follow similar principles demonstrate the timeless effectiveness of Marcus's approach. Warren Buffett's modest lifestyle, despite his enormous wealth, is legendary. He still lives in the same house he bought decades ago, drives modest cars, and avoids expensive luxuries. This simplicity allows him to focus entirely on investment decisions without the distractions that wealth often creates. Tim Cook's simple living philosophy enhances his decision-making clarity as Apple's CEO. Despite having access to every luxury technology can provide, he maintains a relatively simple, personal life. This approach helps him stay connected to Apple's customers while avoiding the isolation that extreme wealth can create. Naval Ravikant's approach to wealth and happiness reflects deep understanding of the principles Marcus practiced. After achieving financial independence through successful startups and investments, Naval focuses on experiences, relationships, and personal growth rather than accumulating more possessions. He advocates for building wealth to buy freedom rather than things. Charlie Munger's voluntary simplicity contributed to his investment success over decades. Warren Buffett's longtime partner maintained modest personal expenses while building enormous wealth through disciplined investing. His simple lifestyle eliminated distractions and allowed complete focus on business and investment decisions. These modern examples show how simplicity enhances rather than restricts true wealth. By avoiding the psychological traps that luxury creates, these leaders can think more clearly, make better decisions, and find greater satisfaction in their achievements. Their wealth serves their values rather than controlling their behavior. Building anti-fragile wealth psychology requires understanding the difference between having money and being controlled by money. Marcus achieved true financial freedom not by accumulating the most wealth, but by developing the healthiest relationship with wealth. He could use money as a tool without being used by it. Creating psychological independence from net worth fluctuations is crucial for long-term success. When your happiness and self-worth depend on your bank account balance, you become vulnerable to market volatility and economic uncertainty. Marcus maintained emotional stability regardless of the empire's financial condition, because his identity wasn't tied to external circumstances. The freedom that comes from needing very little is perhaps the greatest luxury of all. When you can be content with simple pleasures and basic necessities, you're immune to most forms of financial manipulation and pressure. You can make decisions based on principles rather than financial desperation. How voluntary discomfort improves business decision-making is counterintuitive, but powerful. When you're comfortable with discomfort, you can take calculated risks without being paralyzed by fear or loss. You can negotiate from strength because you don't desperately need any particular outcome. You can think long-term because you're not driven by immediate gratification. Building wealth that serves your values rather than controlling them requires constant vigilance. It's easy to let lifestyle inflation gradually erode your financial discipline. Marcus maintained his principles through daily practice and regular self-examination. He never allowed temporary pleasures to compromise his long-term freedom. The ultimate luxury is not needing luxury to be happy. When you can find joy in simple things, appreciate basic pleasures, and derive satisfaction from meaningful work, you've achieved a form of wealth that money can't buy. This psychological richness is what Marcus cultivated alongside his material resources. The implementation framework for modern entrepreneurs begins with understanding your current relationship with money. Most people have unconscious beliefs about wealth that drive their behavior in destructive ways. They might believe that expensive things are automatically better, that their worth as a person correlates with their net worth, or that happiness requires constant upgrades to their lifestyle. Marcus developed conscious awareness of these patterns through daily self-examination. Every evening, he would review his thoughts and actions related to money and possessions. Did he make any purchases based on ego rather than necessity? Did he feel envious of others' possessions? Did he derive too much satisfaction from his own wealth? This honest self-assessment allowed him to correct course before bad habits became entrenched. The 30-day voluntary discomfort challenge is a practical way to begin developing Marcus's mindset. Choose one area of your life where you become accustomed to luxury or convenience, then deliberately simplify it for a month. This might mean eating simple meals, sleeping on a harder surface, taking cold showers, or walking instead of driving when possible. The goal isn't to punish yourself or live in poverty. It's to break the psychological dependence on comfort that weakens your resilience and decision-making ability. When you prove to yourself that you can be happy with less, you gain tremendous psychological freedom. You're no longer afraid of losing what you have because you know you can thrive with much less. Designing your personal simplicity protocol requires identifying the difference between your needs and your wants. Marcus was ruthless about this distinction. He needed adequate nutrition, but he didn't need exotic delicacies. He needed functional clothing, but he didn't need designer fashion. He needed reliable transportation, but he didn't need luxury vehicles. Make a list of everything you currently spend money on, then categorize each item as a need, a want, or a luxury. Be honest about which category each item truly belongs in. You might be surprised to discover how many things you consider needs are actually wants or luxuries that you've rationalized as necessities. Separating needs from wants in business and life creates clarity that improves every decision you make. When you know what you actually need to accomplish your goals, you can focus your resources on those essentials while avoiding the distractions that drain your energy and attention. This clarity is particularly valuable for entrepreneurs who face constant pressure to upgrade their equipment, expand their offices, or invest in expensive marketing. Creating wealth systems that align with Stoic principles means building businesses that serve meaningful purposes rather than just generating money. Marcus viewed the empire's wealth as a tool for promoting human flourishing, not as an end in itself. Modern entrepreneurs can adopt this perspective by focusing on creating value for customers and society, rather than just maximizing profits. This doesn't mean ignoring profitability or financial metrics. It means ensuring that your wealth-building activities contribute to something larger than your personal enrichment. When your business serves a meaningful purpose, you're more likely to make decisions that create long-term value rather than short-term gains. Building generational wealth through character rather than just capital reflects Marcus's deepest insights about true prosperity. Financial wealth can be lost through market crashes, poor decisions, or economic upheaval. But the character traits that create wealth, wisdom, discipline, integrity, and perseverance can be passed down to future generations regardless of external circumstances. Marcus invested heavily in developing these qualities in himself and in training his successors to embody them. He understood that the empire's long-term prosperity depended more on the character of its leaders than on the size of its treasury. Modern entrepreneurs can apply this principle by focusing as much on personal development as on business development. The compound effect of character-based wealth building becomes apparent over time. When you make decisions based on principles rather than short-term gains, you build a reputation for integrity that creates opportunities others don't receive. When you treat employees, customers, and partners fairly, you build loyalty that survives economic downturns. When you focus on creating real value rather than just extracting profits, you build businesses that thrive across multiple economic cycles. Marcus's approach to wealth psychology offers a radical alternative to the consumption-driven mindset that dominates modern culture. Instead of using money to buy happiness, he used money to buy freedom. Instead of accumulating possessions to impress others, he accumulated wisdom to serve others. Instead of building wealth to escape problems, he built wealth to solve problems. This shift in perspective transforms every aspect of your relationship with money. Earning becomes a means of creating value rather than just accumulating resources. Spending becomes a conscious choice aligned with your values rather than an unconscious response to marketing or social pressure. Saving becomes a form of freedom rather than deprivation. Investing becomes a way of supporting businesses and causes you believe in rather than just chasing returns. The psychological benefits of this approach extend far beyond financial outcomes. When you're not constantly worried about money, you can focus on more important things. When you're not driven by material desires, you can appreciate what you already have. When you're not competing in status games, you can build genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than envy or intimidation. Marcus achieved something that few wealthy people ever experience: complete psychological freedom from his wealth. He could enjoy luxury when appropriate without needing it for happiness. He could lose everything without losing his sense of self-worth. He could make decisions based on what was right rather than what was profitable. This is the true goal of wealth psychology, not just having money, but having the right relationship with money. The practical steps for implementing this philosophy begin with small daily choices. Choose function over form when making purchases. Practice gratitude for what you already have before acquiring anything new. Regularly engage in voluntary discomfort to maintain your resilience. Focus on experiences and relationships rather than possessions. Invest in your character development as much as your financial portfolio. These practices might seem insignificant individually, but their cumulative effect is transformative. Over time, you'll develop the same psychological invincibility that allowed Marcus to lead the world's largest empire without being corrupted by its wealth. You'll build the kind of financial freedom that goes far beyond having money in the bank. The Marcus Aurelius approach to wealth psychology isn't about living in poverty or rejecting material success. It's about achieving true prosperity, the kind that enhances your life without controlling it. It's about building wealth that serves your deepest values while maintaining the psychological freedom to enjoy it fully. This is how you build wealth like an emperor, while maintaining the soul of a philosopher. This is how you achieve financial success without sacrificing your integrity or happiness. This is how you create the kind of prosperity that enriches not just your bank account, but your entire life. The choice is yours. You can continue chasing the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next level of luxury, always hoping that more money will finally bring the satisfaction you're seeking. Or you can follow Marcus's example and discover that true wealth comes not from having everything you want, but from wanting nothing you don't already have. The Emperor's wealth psychology awaits your application. The same principles that allowed the richest man in history to remain psychologically free are available to you today. The question isn't whether they work. History has proven their effectiveness. The question is whether you'll have the wisdom to apply them. Your journey to true financial freedom starts now.